Okay, so first thing I want to point out is what I ended up doing with the headline on this top story. Once in a while, you come up with a picture that just cries out for doing something different. So this had so much blue sky, and well, I kind of had a quandary that I probably iterated a little bit during that class, is I wanted this to be the center of focus, but because it was a local story versus, well, I mean, this other one was local, but it was didn't have a lot of connection to our university. And so if this is a university newspaper, I wanted one to have a little more connection. The hiking club was university students. All the quotes are from university students. So this had a bit better connection to the university than the motorcycle story. Those were the two best photos. You notice, however, that the photo at the bottom is, this photo here is in some ways almost as powerful as this photo up here, even though this one's bigger. The top one is bigger. The bottom one is more powerful in some ways because the image inside it is bigger. And so the image inside your picture has a lot to do with how powerful it is. So the bottom one is, for its size, in some ways more powerful than the one at the top because the image in the top one is so small. Now, I think I overcame that a little bit. Of course, I used a lot of blue sky as part of it, but I also then put the headline in it, and I put a blurb in it. Now, actually, the way I did this was originally was to put the blurb below the headline. But yet last night I was just demonstrating that as we adopt some of the newspaper or some of the magazine styles, putting the blurb above a headline and the whole idea of printing over photos and stuff is very much a magazine thing that newspapers are adopting. And so you look for these opportunities to put your headlines over the photos and stuff, but it just depends on the photo. You don't always have a photo you can do that with. But also when somebody, at least some of the people talking about blurbs, talked about in relations to newspapers, or rather to magazines, that the blurb sometimes went above the headline. So this is an example of a blurb going above the headline, not a normal newspaper thing. Now that's not, and consequently it's not what I actually originally did, but I did this, I changed it just to make my point yesterday. So I started with it down here and I put the headline above. This is probably my preference, is to put the headline above and the blurb below. For one thing, it was, when I changed it, it was too tight to this gal's head. Can't see as much of the mountains and stuff. So to me, in this case, it's better to put the blurb under it. This blurb is kind of you could say it's a summary sentence. But it's a blurb. It's a summary sentence. Basically, a blurb is, if it's not a pull-out quote, it's typically some sort of a summary sentence. Normally, if you're doing just a summary sentence, a normal summary sentence, it's not going to be more than 14 point, and it's going to be in place of a subheadline. So it's going to be underneath the headline, but in the right above the text, and it's going to be no more than 14 point. This is, I think, 24 point. Let me see what size it is. 24 point, yeah. So this is 24 points, so it's bigger than what we normally make a summary sentence. And so once it gets there, we're calling it a blurb, basically. And so you do different things with blurbs than you do with standard summary sentences. And basically also, it started off, by the way, the blurb was started off as a caption. I didn't really know what to say for the caption. This is what I wrote for the caption, then I realized, guess what? Well, no, I went in stages. So I wrote this in my caption, and then I thought, well, I'll put the caption above the headline, or above the photo. I'll put it up by the headline. And then as I started looking at it, I realized I had the opportunity to make a blurb out of it instead of a caption. So this doesn't really have a caption. The blurb is the caption, basically. So that was the evolution of that thinking. Having more than one photo also helps create the center focus. The center focus is created in several ways. Your headline, which is the biggest headline on your page, something like blurbs and subheads are part of it. So here we have a blurb and a subheadline, both, and we have a second photo. All of this help create the center focus towards the top. Looking at the page in overall, this photo here, I originally, if you recall from Monday, was up here someplace. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it's up more towards the top. And I didn't feel good about that. It left too much gray down here, and we didn't really have a golden triangle. I don't normally like to put photos at the bottom of their story. But when I looked at the whole page, and one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about layout and design is unity. You have to look at your page. You want contrast, like center focus versus other art, but you also want to look at unity. How does this whole thing fit together? And in this case, I decided that pulling that story down, or that photo down to the bottom of that story, made a better overall design, and so I brought it down so we have more of a golden triangle. But then I did not have a pull-out quote here. And notice up in this area, there's a lot of gray. And so even though now I could have possibly maybe put this photo here in the center of the page. That would have been another way to make it a little more golden triangle-ish. And to get rid of some of the grayness here, and that would have looked okay. That's a good solution, putting the subheadline in one column, bringing this photo over to be in columns 2 and 3 instead of 3 and 4. I would have been reluctant putting the caption at the side of it if it were in 2 and 3. It might be a little confusing, so I'd probably be forced to make the photo a little bit smaller and put the caption underneath it. But anyway, that's still a solution to making this page better. But another solution, if you don't have a mugshot or something, a mugshot is basically just the head and maybe not even the shoulders, but mostly the head. Mugshot, when we talk about mugshot, it refers to the sort of picture that a police takes of you if you get arrested. They take a picture of your head, and sideways, forwards, and they put it in their police files. That's a mugshot. So we call mugshots basically head shots that we put in the paper. This would be a good place to put in a half-column mugshot, wrap around a half-column mugshot here, but I didn't have a half-column mugshot there. And so instead I decided to do a shadow box. So let me show you how to do a shadow box. One of the questions last night was, do we have to learn how to do shadow boxes? I was saying your layout, I might be counting it as bonus. But it's hard to say that even because I'm going to count, as I just said, I'm going to be looking at your page and saying, is it balanced? Have you eliminated the major gray areas? Do you have the golden triangle? So when I look at your layout, maybe I'm not going to care too much if you have a shadow box, if you have good photos. What if you don't have good photos? What if you're trapped like I am and I have this story down here and I have too much gray in this area? Then you don't necessarily have to know how to do a shadow box, but it certainly makes more graphic appeal than just the quote. And it's also, it's a more powerful graphic element. And if you don't have anything else, that's your last choice, basically. So most papers have pull-out quotes of some sort. They may have a different style, but a shadow box, again, I like because if the whole point of a pull-out quote is to have graphic impact, a shadow box has more graphic impact than just about anything else that you can do with a pull-out quote. So I'm going to show you how to do it. It's up to you whether or not you actually apply it. I won't directly deduct if you don't have a shadow box, but that doesn't mean there won't be deductions if you don't do a good layout, which the layout might depend. You might, again, get stuck like I did here and want to have a shadow box, and so I will show you how to do that. So I'm going to blow into this area, and again, when a pull-out quote does not take the quote out of the story, it copies it. It still leaves the quote where it's at. I'm going to go to Control-1 to go into this area. You can do it with a text box without using a graphic box. So in my first video, I used a graphic box and put a text box inside of it, and that's what we used to have to do. You don't have to do that anymore. So I'm going to just create a text box. I'm doing it out here because there's already text here. If I try, I can't really draw a text box on top of a text box. So I'm going to draw the text box over here, and then I'll pull it over here. One of the things I discovered yesterday, you can't have a shadow box unless you have color on the inside of the box. I didn't realize this. So that color can be white. It doesn't have to be a different color. You say, well, that looks white. No, white and blank, white and empty are not the same thing. So as a text box right now, it is empty. It's an empty box. It's not a white box. So I need to, while it's selected, I need to choose a color for it and make the background white. The easiest place is with the color palette. All these palettes are found underneath the window, by the way. So I opened up the color palette, and notice here in the color palette, you should know this. There are three icons here at the top you need to be aware of. The first one is the frame. The second one is for the text inside the frame. And the third one is for the background inside the frame. So I can change the color of the frame by itself. It can be a different color than the background and then the text. So these three icons are very important because you need to choose the right one to get what you want. Now, before I go any further, yeah, this is a good time to do it, I guess. So as I mentioned, to become a shadow box, you have to have some color on the inside of that box. It can be white, but it can't be empty. And so right now it's empty, it's not white. So I can't make a shadow box out of it until I put a color inside. I can make it white if I want to. And that's a good option, it's not a bad option. But if you want to put color on it, I want to explain how to choose colors. I had to learn this on my own because when I was your age, we didn't learn about colors, color combinations and stuff, because few newspapers use much color. We basically use what we call spot color, which is they pre-mix the color and maybe make the nameplate color or something. They do a little bit of color in the front page, no place else, because color was very, very expensive. For labor reasons, not so much for the ink, but for the labor, is that you had, once you printed the color, well, first off, to make a color photo, it had to go through 4 press units. Not one, but 4 press units. One would be black, one would be cyan, a bluish color, one would be magenta, a reddish color, one would be yellow. And those 4 colors mixed into full color. And so to get a full color photo, you had to put it through four presses. When you got done, you had to clean those presses up. So if after you did the color photo, you wanted it to be black again, all you had to take all that color ink out of it, take that time to clean up that press before you could get going again, and use that press for more normal pages. So it was expensive. I think, well, I'm not going to go into prices anymore. It doesn't, because it wouldn't be by today's money anyway. It was too expensive for most newspapers to bother with color. Probably for the first half of my career, very few newspapers use color. And then the second half, it became cheaper and cheaper until now basically everybody uses color because it's a lot cheaper. Modern presses, things like that, have made a difference, and so it's cheaper. So nonetheless, so what I'm saying is I didn't learn color combinations very well, how to choose a color. I may have mentioned last week that the basic colors of cyan and magenta and so forth are not good colors to pick usually. They kind of jump out and they don't blend in. They're not unified with what's the colors already in the page. So what I found is that the best way to choose a color for a shadow box is to choose a color that's already on the page someplace. This one here I've chose to be blue because we have all this blue up here in that top photo, in the center of focus. I could possibly choose a brownish color. We have brown in this photo here, the watermelon girl. We have a little bit of kind of brownish color with the motorcycle. We have some brown in the Nauris photo. So there's really about 2 good choices on this page to make it unified and look good graphically. Well, you could say 4. One to be blue, one to be brown, one to be white, and one to be black. So those are your 4 colors that would not stand out and look odd on this page. So you saw I chose blue here. Let me choose a different color for our assignment today. And one way to do it, probably again the best way to do it, is the color palette has a picker tool right here. The picker tool will create a new color depending on whatever you point at and click. So you can point at your photo and click, and it will capture that color. So let's say I decided I wanted to use one of these light brownish colors from this photo instead. And so I go up here. Well, let me hit the picker first. I might want to zoom in to see it a little closer. So I'm going to hit Control 1 so I can see it just a little closer, but it didn't, just pointing at it wasn't enough. So I'm kind of stuck without losing the picker. So I'm going to go, I think I can do it from here anyway. I'm going to point at that kind of light brown up here and hit click. And now you see down here that color is now down in the color palette. So I use the picker tool to copy that color from the photo down into the color palette. And I'm going to hit the plus sign here and now give it a name. So I'll hit the plus sign, and you have 2 different color models. RGB is one, and that's not usually what you use in newspapers. You usually use the CYMK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K is black. Those are the 4 primary colors that most presses use. But anyway, it was stuck on the RGB is more TV sets. You use RGB, red, green, and blue, different color of blue. Anyways, I'm going to call this dusty, kind of a light brown. But for lack of I've got some other browns now from demonstrating this twice before. So this one's going to be called dusty. I'll hit OK. And so going back, I unclick the picker tool. So if I go over and click on, well, the box is already selected, I can go ahead and hit the frame. I want it to be dusty, and I want the contents to be dusty. So dusty, apparently it looks like it's selected, but it's not. So I will click in that again, hit dusty again, and see why is it not. Well, let me do the contents first, and hit dusty with that. There it goes. So we have a dusty content, and maybe I need to do that before I do the frame. I'm not sure why. Well, I'm going to have to zoom in and see what's going on here. So I'm going to zoom in on that. And it says it's dusty, but I'm seeing maybe it's just, it sure looks like it has a blue frame to me. Frame, it says it's dusty. So sometimes they use blue on different, just to stand out, you know, like the lines are blue. In the old days when we had to paste up, they had these blue lines on the pages because blue would not photograph in the darkroom. You had to take a picture of your page and make a negative out of it and make your plates with the negative. Well, here they still kind of traditionally put blue as your guides on your page. And so sometimes that blue shows up and it's not really part of the final layout. Okay, so we have a dusty shadow box here. Now we can go to shadowing. There's a couple places to do shadows, but I'm going to go ahead and do it down here. So when you look at these options down at the bottom here, you see you have your all your options here, and you're going to see different things below it depending on what you click there. And one of them is shadow box. So this is obviously important to Quark to put a button for shadow box. So they think that this is an important tool to have. So I'm going to click on shadow box, and I have a problem here because in order to apply shadow, I have to get to this box here that's behind my video. So I'm going to have to pull this whole page out of the way here a second, and if I can, get it to stay. I see I'm the wrong thing up here. Okay, so now I can click on Apply Shadow. And so it automatically came up with a kind of default shadow already. I'll go ahead and, I can go ahead and move the rest of the page back again, except I can't get to it. Interesting. Well, anyway, I just leave it there for now. Okay, so let me show you though some variations of the shadow. You have some options here. I'm not really sure what all these mean. I'd have to read a little more about them. Inherent opacity, multiply, drop shadow. Not exactly sure what that means. But I do know that we have some options over here. This is you have drop shadow color. Now, I really wouldn't want to put a drop shadow color other than black, because how many shadows have you seen that haven't been black? I mean, you don't walk outside and have a blue shadow. So I don't even know why they have the option of having a shadow that's not black. That to me is kind of bizarre. So I leave that at black. I'm not going to change that. This here is opacity, could come into play later. Angle, kind of weird. At angle, it's if you're kind of saying, okay, where's the sun at? And so that's basically, like I said, what you're saying. Where is the sun? Where's the sun shining from? Is the sun shining from the left, or the sun shining from the right? Or is it shining from the top, shining from the bottom? You can put the shadow different places depending where the sun is at, so to speak, where you want the sun to appear at. So the natural or the default is that the sun is up here someplace. But you can move that shadow around if you want to. You also have the distance. How big is your shadow? So we can increase the size of the shadow. You see what's happening now. I'm increasing that shadow. And I prefer it a little bit bigger like this. This is about the right size for me. That's one, I'm not sure exactly how they're measuring. Well, it's in inches, I guess. 0.153 is the size of the shadow. So I like a fairly visible shadow. So this is an important one to me, that what they call distance. You also have some other ones. The scale, Not really sure what, I'm trying to remember what scale is. Scale is, it looks like distance to me also, but I don't know. Anyway, you can use one or the other as far as the distance and the scale can kind of do the same thing. The angle is, well, I guess that's what we were, well, yeah. Angle can, again, change the position of the sun, so to speak. So you can play with that a little bit. Anyway, you have a number of things here you can play with to make that shadow look bigger, smaller, different angles, put it, have the sun shining from a different direction in the shadow, making the shadow. You also have, well, let me pull this first off over into the box. Now that we have this, we can pull the shadow box over into the story. And the question here then, well, we want to do a runaround. They have a box here that all you have to do is click on it. You have a runaround. Let me see, why aren't we don't have, we have to go to, I think I know why it's not doing it, but it's not doing it by just that click. I'm going to go to the runaround and have to turn on the, if you remember when you're doing a runaround, you have to change none to item. So I think that's why it wasn't doing it before. So let me go back now to shadow and just hit that, and I think it will now work. So it does, it has an automatic runaround. You notice it's not enough on the left side. And last night when I was using it, it seemed to be even more than this. So I don't know exactly. That's interesting because it seems to have less runaround now than it did yesterday. I'm going to turn that off and go back to the runaround and do it exactly the way I want it. And that will change depending on even how this, where this sits among all these lines of type. So over here, I'm going to, I don't need anything right now above it. That the words above it are far enough off of this shadow box that I don't need to put any extra space above it. But I do need some on the left, and so I click this button here and increase the space between the box and the text on the left of it. I also need some on the right, and that may have to be quite a bit more because I want to get away from the shadow. So instead of 6 point, that might end up being closer to 12 point. By the time I push the text away from that, not only the box, but from the shadow. So it is right now 13 point, looks about right. And I may have to, right now, actually where it's sitting right now, I probably don't need to put anything below it. But here's the one in case I did. And yesterday I had to each time, so it just depends where it's sitting compared to the rest of the text. I had to put some more space below the box. Right now, the way it's sitting right now, I don't need to. Okay, so I have a shadow box. Now I need words in it. So I can go back to the text tool, and I need to find a quote. On this front page, I don't have a whole lot of, I only have one quote, it looks like. And so the question is that, can I take a pull-out quote of that? Is there something in there decent? In such moments, I am proud to be born in Kazakhstan. Maybe you're well, there isn't any other quote on the front page, and I would yesterday I did pull, I think this other shadow box I created is from the page 2. So you can pull something from page 2, but it's a little bit false advertising for at least on this page. So I already linked it to a box on that I already dragged down to page 2. And I actually made a pull-out quote already on it. I believe this is the same one. No, that's hiking. Excuse me, that's hiking. Over someplace. Down here. I did one for the racing, I guess. So this, I could pull out a quote from page 2. I hesitate doing that, but for today I will, because I don't like the quotes on page 1, and I do want to pull out quote. I don't want to repeat this one. So I see one from a guy named Bolkov. I need to remember that name to add that. And so I'll take that. I don't know, that's not a great quote, but it's something. Go back up to my quote box. And click in here and hit Control V to paste it in. For this short quote, probably I don't need this big of a box, but I can shrink the box. So with the pull-out quote, first off, I also need Bokov's name. I'm going to click behind this quote, hit Enter, put a hyphen, space, and his name is Stas Bokov down here. I'll pull his name out and put it on this next line. I better undo that because apparently it got into the regular story someplace. I don't even know where necessarily. I need to make sure sometimes it's hard to, the mouse wants to click into the background story. I don't know why. And all you have to tend to do is click on the item tool and click on that box again, and it will go into, it'll let you click into that. So anyway, I'm going to paste in the name again. Let me go up to 200% so you can see what I'm doing better. So here we have the pull-out quote. Oops, I didn't have a quote mark at the start of it. I need to put in a quote mark there. So the quote itself should be at least, if there's a few exceptions, like I have at times done a half-column pull-out quote. Well, with a half-column pull-out quote, you're not going to use 14-point type. And I've only done that, I've done that a few times where I really felt I didn't have a mugshot. I really felt like it needed some graphic, or I needed to fill the space or something, different reasons, different times. But if you have a good-sized shadow box like this, you're going to want to go to no less than 14 point. So with that selected, you click into the text tool and go up to 14. And with this short of a quote, I might even be tempted to go to 18. Obviously has more graphic effect if I do. That's not the norm. It normally wouldn't be that big, but I'm going to go ahead and put it at 18 point, bold italics. And I'm going to make the name, first off, I'm going to make it, well, I'll go ahead and do the size first. Probably, normally I would leave it 10 point if it were a 14 point pull-out quote, but since I went up to 18, I'll go ahead and put the name line up to 12. And then I need to go to paragraph and make it flush right. So I want the name line to be not bold if I don't need it to be. In this case, with the bigger type, it's not necessary to have it be bold. And I want to have it flush right. The main quote, I want to be flush left, however. So while I'm in here, I'll make that flush left. Whether or not you need an indent is questionable. I'm going to see what it looks like without one. And probably that would be a decision, though, that you'd make as a style for the newspaper. Do we put a indent on a pull-out quote or not? I think it looks a little better without it, so I'm going to leave it without it. We need to get the text inside the box away from the box also. So I'm going to select the box again, and I believe might be the text frame. Let me see which. Okay, over here you have a couple of options here. Again, this is the text frame button here, icon that I'm clicking. This here is run text around all sides. So in this one, it's doing left, right, top, bottom all at the same time, and you only do one box. And so as I click on that, I do recommend that because when I try to do it by itself, I'm not always getting, the top doesn't always come down when I'm doing it separately. But here it's coming down off the top, it's coming down, coming over from the left, coming over from the right. So this looks pretty good. So I recommend when you need space on the inside that you make sure this is clicked here. So it's called the run text around all sides. This is the interior of the box. So it's not actually, you're not clicking the runaround box, you're clicking the text box and insetting it from the outside lines. Okay, so that's pretty much how you do a shadow box, shadow text box. I'm recording this, and I'm recording it separately exactly so I can call it shadow text boxes or something. And so you can go back and look at this when you want to do a shadow box and follow through on this. But we have a few minutes yet. See if there's anything else. If I want to maybe try to do this again one more time, just to demonstrate it quickly. Anything else I want to say? I think that pretty much, I wanted to talk about the shadow box. I want to talk about the blurb and how you use, if we go back now and look at the, hit Control-0, so we can see the whole page. Again, you can see that brown does blend in. There's enough brown in the page that that's okay. So the blue was okay. The blue, I used white text, by the way. That's your other option. This brown is light enough. The black text looks pretty good. I don't think I would want to go white. However, maybe that is the other thing I should show. Let me blow back into where you can see that better. Again, you just go over here. I've clicked into the shadow box. Remember, this was the third, the icon here is text. Click the text there and go down and say I want it to be white. And oops, it still thinks it's on background. Okay, let me make it dusty again. I thought click, click, click. For some reason, sometimes these buttons don't click right, and it's not clicking right now. It's not letting me choose it. But I do have another choice, and that is if I click in here and get it selected, if I hit Control-A, that will select all the text inside that box. And now let me go to text, and let me go to the color, and I'm choosing the text color white here, and now I do have white. So if the color palette for some reason is resisting it, then go the other way around. This has multiple ways. I think you can also right-click and go to Modify, and also find colors here to play with. You have tabs up here, so you have your, box, text, frame, runaround, drop shadow. So you have a variety of ways of approaching a number of these tasks. As I said, I don't know, the white looks pretty good too. The white is a little bit light. If I'm going to use white, then I'm probably going to come down here and choose the name line and make it bold. I didn't feel like I needed to when it was black, but here I might make the name line bold just because as being in white, it's just a little bit too light. So we can go with white, we can go with black. This is a light enough shade that you can go either way. Going back up again to Control 0. Again, because there's enough brown on that page, I think that looks fairly unified. I might still prefer the blue, but those are pretty close. But when you start imagine this as green. In fact, let me just do it. Maybe that's a better use of my time to make a point here and show you how bad that will look. And so I go in here, Control 1 again, and now I'm going to go over to the color palette, and I'm going to make where's green at? Okay, there's not a green in here yet. Okay, well, I still want green to make my point. So I'm going to create a new color up here, and I'll choose green up here. And have to make sure it takes. I had to click again and hit OK. You see, by the way, you see how this is showing you the mixture. That green is 73% cyan and 98% yellow, at least the color green that I made. So anyway, that just shows you how when the press is mixing colors, that's exactly what it's doing. It's mixing that percentage of each color. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now choose that, change dusty to green. And now go back up. I hope you see that doesn't fit. See, that color just doesn't mix well with this color. Now, if I had a picture of a forest or something that had lots of green in it, that color would be fine. But because I don't have anything else on that page that's green, that doesn't look fine, and particularly pictures. And so look at your pictures. To try to decide what color to put in a shadow box, look at your pictures on that page. Choose something that's compatible with the pictures. Right now, green is not compatible. There's nothing on the page that looks like it's compatible with green. It's just not there. And so green does not look good here. But it could, if I had pictures of, a football field with green grass, or a park, or, with trees, stuff like that. If I had green in a picture, green would look okay. But it doesn't look okay on this page because there's no green in none of these pictures have green in them. There's not a speck of green on this page. Other than this box, it doesn't look right. So I'll go back to dusty, and now it looks okay. So find a color in a photo in order to decide what color you want in your shadow box or something else that you might want to colorize other than stories per se, and other than photos per se. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Any questions? We are out of time now. Any questions on any of this or on anything? You have both on Moodle and on the syllabus, it tells you the next date. And maybe I'll just very quickly go to our Moodle site and open that up so you know when your next assignment is, so your next project. I'm just going to go to the syllabus. It should be compatible with what maybe I haven't even set it up yet below the syllabus. But if we go in the syllabus, we are now week 10, so you've got this one in. I think it's, okay, down here. I listed under week 12, but it's really the next week. So like this week, it's going to be the Tuesday, well, I'm saying Monday midnight, but I will change that right now. Well, I can't change it, it's in a PDF. I will change it though, and I may have already on the page, maybe not, but it'll be Tuesday morning at 9. So like I did last time, I changed it from midnight Monday to Tuesday morning. I will be stricter on deadlines. You need to meet your deadline. About 10 people at least did not meet their deadline this time. If they have it in, a day or so late, I probably will ignore it this time, but I want you to learn deadlines. Keep your deadlines. Newspaper, you can't be a day late. You can't, not going to work. So you need to hit your deadlines. So anyway, so be the 23rd, actually the 24th then of July, the morning of the 24th will be your next deadline. So you have a little bit of time. You have basically, 3 weeks to get this done. And it should be a lot easier because you have the same stories. You're using the same stories. You're just going to the tabloid format, 11/17, 11 inches by 17 inches. So you've had a chance to work on headlines. You can work some more in headlines. I will try to give you some feedback within the next, for sure I'll give you general feedback. I'll use at least some examples, student examples next week, probably in the regular lecture, maybe also in the tutorials, some more. I'll just pull some out without names and explain what's wrong with them. I hope to give you individual feedback by next week, but it may be the end of next week. I don't know. We've got a lot of stuff to do. I've got a lot of stuff to do to get caught up. So you may not get your individual feedback immediately, but you'll have it before the next one's due for sure. And you'll have some general feedback. At least by next Monday, I'll start giving you feedback and some of the things I saw that were not right. So you can start adapting. So it wouldn't hurt you to start playing with your tabloid page. I'm going to have much higher expectations with tabloid. In one way, you might say my purpose for the first project, or the reason why I have 3 projects, let me put it that way, is that the first one, you're just learning how to use the technology. You're trying to learn how to use Quark. And so while I have to grade it, I will consider everything else, the primary purpose is to get you to learn how to use Quark. And in some cases, you're still, like the shadow box, you're still learning. And you will continue to learn, but now you know the basics of how to use Quark to do your next assignment. Next assignment, I expect you to pay much more attention to the critique sheet and to be in line with our styles and so forth. Show me you know how to do it a little better, be better with your headlines. You have more time. Like I say, you've already written the headlines once, but now use a little more time and try to be a little more creative. Try to go to that thesaurus, look for other words, try to make it fit better, try to make it more active. And we'll talk about some of these things on Monday, some of the things that some of you didn't do that you could do better. So you can see, you can think about your own page and think how you can do your page better. So now it's time to start fine-tuning. Now, your final exam will be a tabloid. So you can kind of think of this as a pre-final exam. So this is the one that really is important that you figure out how to do a tabloid, because it is your final, you will have a final exam that mirrors this. You'll have different stories with your final exam. So you got to write original headlines for different stories now, next time. And they probably won't relate to Xiamen. They might relate to Kazakhstan, just because I have those handy. So you'll have stories you haven't seen before that you're going to have to write headlines for and so forth then during your final exam. We are only going to be using Windows. I think I mentioned that already. They've decided we can't use this room for whatever reason. Somebody asked if you could use your laptops. That I won't be able to get through them. I'm having to fight them a little more this year than I did last year. Last year I did let students use their laptops, in part because, nobody had ever done desktop publishing before. And I didn't come until week 5 of the semester because I was still teaching in Kazakhstan. So I took over the class. We did not have Quark. We had a freeware that is not nearly as fast as Quark or as good as Quark. So we had lots of obstacles. And so I was able, and like I said, they had never dealt with me before. They were pretty liberal with me. And this year they're giving me a harder time about what I want to do. So you're not going to be able to use your laptops. You're going to have to use the desktops, the Windows desktops. So you might want to go use those a little bit, get familiar with them. That means you're not going to be able to bring in your styles and stuff that you may create your style sheets. You have to start those from scratch, basically. I would still recommend it because as you're, with your first story, as you're stylizing your text, all you have to do is go over and click the plus sign over on your style sheet and then create your style for your body text and then use that for all of your other stories. You can do the same thing with your headlines. You create a headline, go make a style out of it. You have to understand where you would put the style in the sense of, with the body text, that would be a paragraph style because it has indents, it has justification, stuff like that besides sizing, whereas your headline would probably be a text style because that's just all you're doing is changing the size of the text. You don't have other elements that you're concerned about. So I would still, while you're doing the final exam, be creating a style sheet as you're doing it. But anyway, those are things you're going to have to become comfortable with in order to do a good job with your final exam. Okay, well, we're way past time now. Any other questions? By the way, no, you guys won't be affected. Next week we do have accreditation. You probably know that. I think they're going to meet with some of you and give you a rah-rah. The accreditation is very, very important for our department. They are probably going to visit my Tuesday morning class. And so I'm going to have to give them except I'm not going to see them again. I wish I'd known, but one of the rah-rahs is be interactive, which is like pulling teeth to get you guys to interact with me. So might as well be a dentist instead of a professor. Okay, well, we're done. Thank you.